This week, we're going to be covering summary queries. They're also called aggregate queries. And you are going to read chapter 5 in your book, and then you're going to go through the lecture demo. And to create these aggregate queries or summary queries, we're basically going to be using 5 different aggregate functions. And the functions that we're going to use are similar to functions that you see in Excel. They are the statistical functions: count, sum, max, min, and average. And to set these up, you basically put them in the select statement. So you say select, and then you use your function name, and then whatever column you want counted or totaled. And you can do more than one. So if you wanted it to total a column and give you the maximum and minimum for that column, you could have multiple functions in the same select. You have to tell it what table you're working with. And then if you wanted to limit the rows that it's looking at, you would insert a where condition. So here's an example. Give the minimum price and then display it, the column, as smallest price. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, so we'll run this. And you can see that we gave the alias for the column title, and then it retrieved the smallest number. And you could change this to max. Of course, then we probably want it to say largest priced here. You could do sum, you can do count. You can also do more than one. Okay, so it's just like any other query. If you're going to do multiple, then you have to put commas in between them. And let's see, we'll do sum. So you can kind of see how that works. So it's really pretty straightforward. The only little tricky thing about this is if you want to include a column that you're not going to do any statistics on or any function with, then you have to use group by. So let me find an example here. So if I wanted to count the customers and display the countries, you'll see I have no stat here for country. Then I have to say group by country. So we can try this one out. Right. And if I wanted to pull in any other column besides country, I'm trying to think here, what is in the customer column? Maybe city. I have to include any column that I'm not going to do an aggregate function on down under group by. And you can see it's kind of totaling. So when I put city in there, it changed it. Basically, there's a bunch of ones. Okay, but you can kind of play around with this. If you are doing multiple columns and you want to kind of limit what you see, you can use the having clause instead of where. Okay, so once we include group by here, then we are using having instead of where to do our filtering. Kind of see how that works. So it's pretty straightforward until you start adding columns that you're not doing the aggregate function on. Okay, and then our query changes a little bit and we end up with using group by for those columns that don't have aggregate functions. And then instead of using the where, we have to use having by. Okay, and then if you want to sort, you can still use order by. Okay, and so you're going to go through that. Then you're going to do the textbook assignment, which gives you practice using those aggregate functions. And so the video demos are kind of grouped. Tasks 1 through 4 are in the first. Task 5 is in the second. Task 6 is in the third. So you can watch those videos and work through this. And then by the time you get done, you'll have a pretty good idea of how these queries work. And then you'll be able to do your milestone. So the final project, milestone 3, has 3 different parts, and this is the first part. Okay, this isn't all of it. This is just part 1. And it is due this week. So basically what you have to do is create 4 aggregate queries for data in your tables. And the idea here is to use your final project. And you cannot just use count for every single query. Okay. It's okay if you use count and average, count and max, count and min. It's okay to use count more than once, but it's not okay to just use count by itself 4 times and call it a day. Okay, so I have some different examples. Your examples, your stuff does not have to be complicated. Okay, you don't have to do a having clause. Okay, you don't have to do that. You don't have to sort, but just remember that any column that you include that does not have a aggregate function, you do need a group by. Okay, and so each one of your queries is worth 5 points, and you need 4 of them. Okay, and they can be on anything you want. So these are just examples that you can look at. They don't have to be as complicated. They can be very simple. Like this one is pretty simple. Okay, so you can do yours just like that. This little Jeopardy game is just for fun if you want to test your knowledge. You can, since you're playing it by yourself, you might just want to do one team. But you can kind of test your knowledge here. Function that returns the number of rows within a particular column that don't have null values. So I would assume this is what is count. Yep. And so I got that right. So I can add the points in and continue. Okay, so kind of fun just to check your knowledge. And then we get into extra credit. So at the bottom of the lecture notes, there is a section on SQL Server Extensions. So anything that is an extension of the software, that is not part of the language. Okay, this is software specific. So I don't have this in the textbook assignment. I have exercises that practice using these extensions. I have them in the extra credit. Okay, but they are kind of cool extensions. So you may want to make sure you read through this little section and then do the extra credit because it's kind of a nice way to get extra points. And I don't think it's going to be too difficult for you. Okay, so this gives you practice using roll-up, cube, grouping sets, and partitioning. Okay, and it's set up just like the textbook assignments. Okay, so I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, it lets you add total rows. That's what a lot of these do. So it's kind of neat that you can add in a little row that'll give you some totaling. If you do the extra credit, there is a separate Dropbox for that. And then I have all of these course resources for you to look at. Oh, and I should mention, for the final project, for that milestone, I think all of you have numeric columns, which is awesome for these functions. But if you don't have very many numeric columns, let's say you have a lot of text columns, you can obviously use count, but you can use max and min on your text columns. A max on a text column will return, the first one in alphabetic order, and a min will return the last one in alphabetic order. So you still can use those functions even on your text columns.